Parshas Naso we learn about the Isha Asoita. She has to bring a korban. She brings a mincha, and then she drinks special water, miraculous water, and she will explode if in fact she did what she wasn't supposed to do. But today we ask a fundamental question. Is there a way for the woman to get out of this? By causing her korban to become pigul. What is pigul? Pigul is a halachic concept, a korban that was disqualified to be brought or to be eaten because of the wrong machshava of the kohen that brought it. He was thinking, I'm going to eat it out of the time frame that one is allowed to. If one eats pigul intentionally, it's chayav kares, and this is one of the 613 mitzvahs in the Torah. When one does a shchita of the korban, it's not just a shchita, there's actually 4 avodas. It's the shchita of the korban, it's the accepting of the blood, it's called Kabbalah. It's the holacha of the blood, taking the blood to the mizbeach while it's in the vessel, and sprinkling it, zrika, sprinkling the dam, the blood, on the mizbeach. Then there is another action, and that is bringing some of the parts of the korban on the mizbeach. So if the kohen thinks the wrong machshava during the first 4 avodos, the korban is disqualified. But if he thinks any of those wrong thoughts thereafter, when bringing the parts of the korban on the mizbeach, the korban doesn't become disqualified. The reason for this is that the sprinkling of the blood, that as if is the nefesh of the korban, is the element that causes the atonement. And after the blood was sprinkled appropriately, there's nothing that can disqualify the korban anymore. But in Zvachim Mem Zayin Amud Aleph, we hear Rabbi Elazar's opinion. Rabbi Elazar ben Yossi says, I heard, Shebalim mefaglim. Not only the kohen can disqualify the korban, cause it to become pigul, the owners of the korban as well. While the work is done on the korban, thinking the wrong machshava can cause the korban, the mincha, to become disqualified. So now let's see about the Isha Asoita. In Parshas Naso we learn that she is checked by drinking special bitter water. If in fact she did what she wasn't supposed to do, this water will kill her. In Kiddushin Daf Lamed Vav Amud Aleph we learn that the Isha Asoita is considered the owners of the mincha, and therefore she does the tnufa, because tnufa has to be done by the owners. In Masechet Soita Daf Chaf Amud Beis we learn that the koyach of the water, the bitter water, to check the soita is only if everything was brought in the korban according to the halacha. Based on everything we said, if the mincha was disqualified, the water won't have any koyach to check her. And if that's the case, why can't the Isha Asoita cause pigul to her mincha, disqualify it, and she will survive? So we have to assume any Isha Asoita that in fact was mezaneh, in order to save her life and her honor, let her disqualify the mincha, and no one will know. It's done by her wrong machshava alone. No one will know what's going on. And if that's the case, the entire credibility of the water to check the Isha Asoita is disappeared. So why is it, or what is the difference between all the korbanos and menachos that the owners can cause pigul and disqualified, as opposed to mincha soita, that it must be that she cannot do this, otherwise there's no reason why we would bring her to Beis HaMikdash and let her drink the water if we know it's not going to work. This is an old question, and many discussed it. The Divrei Chaim appears to be the first one, but Rabbi Yosef Engel wrote an entire sefer on it called B'Gvuros Shmoinim, and he brings 80 different answers to this question. We're not going to bring all the 80 answers, we'll just try to bring 12. If in fact we'll say the machshava of pigul, like other disqualifying machshavos, are not just machshava, you actually need to verbalize it, as Rashi says in Menachos Daf Beis, Tosfos in Psochim Daf Samech Gimel, in Zvachim Daf Dalet. So if that's the case, it's pretty easy. We'll just warn the woman, make sure that you're not allowed to whisper anything while your korban is being brought, and we'll supervise and we'll make sure that in fact she doesn't say anything while the korban is brought. However, the opinion of the Rambam is Perek Yud Gimel Psulei Mukdoshin Halacha Aleph, that machshava alone, her thought alone, any thought, can cause pigul and other disqualifying machshavos. That is what Sefer HaChinuch says in Parashas Tzav, and according to that, the question comes back. So let's try a different way. The soita is not considered the complete owner on her mincha, because her obligation, the obligation to bring the korban of the mincha, is placed on the husband. He is the one who consecrates the korban. She is the one who gets atonement with this, and therefore she does the tenufa, because the owner of the tenufa is the one who gets the atonement. The one who gets atonement is the owner of the tenufa, but it could be that it doesn't consider her a complete owner for the purpose of the din of owners that can cause pigul, because for that, maybe she needs to be the one who consecrates, the one who is obligated to bring the korban, not just the one who is the owner regarding the atonement. More than that, maybe specifically her husband is the one that can cause the pigul, because he is the one who is obligated to bring it, and he is the one who consecrates it. And maybe one actually needs a complete ownership for all purposes, and even her husband won't be able to disqualify this korban. The Chizkuni writes, the pasuk says, "Vehevi es korbana," he should bring her korban. It can't be that this korban comes to atone for her, because this is a zevach reshaim toyevahu. She is a mirshas, and it's an abomination for a person like that to bring a korban. It must be that the man, the husband, he is the one who brings it to atone for himself, because initially when he started seeing things that he didn't like that she was doing immodestly, he needed to rebuke her, and he didn't. And ultimately, he is the one who caused the name of Hashem to be erased, and that is a tremendous chiddush. So some want to prove from here that the woman is not considered the owners at all to this mincha, and therefore she doesn't have a koyach to cause it to become pigul. But it seems that this goes against what the Gemara says in Kiddushin, Daf Lamed Vav Amud Aleph, Lamed Vav Amud Beis, that over there we learn, just like shlamim that have tenufa, the tenufa is done by the owners, so too the minchos require tenufa in the owners, and that is why the soita does tenufa to her mincha, because she is the owner. So it comes out clear that she is considered the owners of the mincha, and even if she's not the complete owners, because the obligation to bring the korban is placed on her husband, he's the one who consecrates, she definitely is considered the owners regarding the atonement. If that's not the case, for what purpose is she considered the owner? Similar to what we said, since her husband is also considered the owners, because he is the one who is obligated to bring it, and he is the one who consecrates it, therefore it's not sufficient. Her machshava alone doesn't do it. We need him to do this as well, and without it, there is no machshava of the owners. Rashi in Zvachim Daf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph says, and what the Gemara says about Rabbi Eliezer, that he heard that even the owners can cause pigul. Rashi says, when? At the time that the Kohen is doing the work, the service on the korban. If the Kohen receives it quietly, he doesn't say anything, and the owners have the wrong thought to cause it pigul, it becomes pigul. And therefore, comes out from this, only if the Kohen is silent, didn't say anything, didn't think anything, it can become pigul by the owners. If that's the case, we have a very simple solution. Let's instruct the Kohen to say clearly, I'm trying to do everything right in this mincha. And if he will say this, her machshava doesn't have the koyach which is going to override the actual words of the kohen. The machshava doesn't have more koyach than the words of the kohen who's doing it, and therefore she will not be able to cause pigul. That is what the Shal Shuvas Binyan, Shlomo, and others say. Some say it could be that the entire koyach of the owners to cause pigul is only if the kohen is in front of them. He's working and they see what he's doing. So when the kohen is doing what he's doing, they can have kavana. I want to wreck this korban. Lo lishma, or pigul machshava. But if the owners are not there, not present at the time that the kohen is doing what he's doing, there is no koyach for their machshava or their intent when they're not there. Therefore, in our case, the soita is in the ezas nashim near Sha'ar Nikanor. The kohen, he is in the azara. She can't see him, and therefore she doesn't have the koyach to cause pigul at all. Some say, let's suggest, or let's instruct the woman to say the time of the four avoidus, the shchita, the kabbalah, the holacha, and the zrika, that at that time she can cause pigul will instruct her to say, all these avodas will be done with the right machshava. Once she says that, there's no koyach in her machshava later to take out from her words that she said before, because machshava doesn't take out midei dibur. The Divrei Chaim, he explains, since the husband is the one who consecrates us, he gives her the mincha, he acquires the mincha to her. It's simple that he wouldn't give her the mincha if she would cause a pigul. He's only giving her the mincha in order to do everything right, that she is going to be yoytze yedei choyva by her korban, not in order for her to cause pigul and disqualify the mincha. And therefore, even though she really is considered the owners, but if she will cause pigul, it comes out that it was never acquired to her. And if that's the case, she cannot cause pigul because it's not hers. She's not the owner anymore. And if, in fact, we'll say this, okay, fine, so she's not the owner. So let her cause pigul, and it comes out that it's not her mincha, but lemaisa, the water can't check her because this is not her korban mincha. And if that's the case, how does this help? This is not true, because here we have what's called a galgal achoiza, or catch-22. If she will cause pigul, it comes out that on the side that will say that he doesn't acquire her the mincha, the korban, and therefore the pigul doesn't catch. If that's the case, so this is not her mincha, so the mincha did not become pigul, and this will go on and on and on, and we must go back to the rules of catch-22 of galgal hachoizer that Reb Shimon Shkop and others explain, that any time that if something will apply, that in itself will cause that it won't be able to apply, really it doesn't work and it doesn't apply. It doesn't have any validity, because being applied causes a built-in contradiction. It comes out really the woman does not have a koyach to cause pigul, because if it will become pigul, it will cause the mincha not to become pigul, because it's not her mincha, and that's impossible. Some say, since the woman doesn't have any inyan that in fact this mincha should be eaten out of its time, all she wants to do is to disqualify the mincha in order for the water not to be able to check her. And it could be that any machshava that doesn't have real kavanah and real intent doesn't work. So even if she thinks, I'm going to eat this out of its time, there is no pigul here. However, from the sugis of the Gemara and the Rambam, it seems that any machshava, even if it doesn't have the real intent to actually do it, the fact that you're throwing and involving a different machshava at that time is the one that disqualifies the korban. More than that, at the beginning of Maseches Menachos, we learn that even if the machshava seems to contradict his deeds, and his deeds prove the opposite of the machshava, in a minchas marcheshes, he thinks it's going to be for minchas machavas. That is still a disqualifying machshava, and if that's the case, it doesn't make a difference what her machshava should be, that real machshava that she's planning to do, it still will disqualify the korban. Some say that our question doesn't even start. We assumed that of course she's going to do it. She's going to cause pigul because she wants to save her life. She wants to go back to her husband. She wants to save her honor. But maybe she won't, because it's an Isur Torah. One is not allowed to cause pigul. And if she does, she will cause the Kohen and the other Kohanim, all the Kohanim who are working there, she's going to make them stumble. And an Isur Kares, eating the mincha. Why can't we say that she has a Cheskas Kashrus, just like any Jew? And he doesn't cause pigul to their korban. But still, we have to wonder. Let's say that in fact, we're not sure that she's going to do it, but there is a chashash that she will, because with that she does save her life and she goes back to her husband. And if that's the case, there is at least a suffix, and if there's a suffix, the whole credibility of the water is shaken. Because even if she doesn't die, why is she allowed to go back to her husband? Maybe in fact she was mizaneh, but she caused pigul to the korban. The Rambam writes in Perek Gimel Menchos Soita Halacha Kaf that the zchus of limud Torah can save her life and cause her not to die when the water is checking her. And if that's the case, why is it that the Rambam writes over there in Halacha Chaf Aleph that the soita that drank the bitter water and didn't die immediately, she's allowed to go back to her husband, even if her husband was a kohen, even if she started becoming sick, but as long as she didn't explode through her stomach, she is allowed to go back to him. Why is it? Why can't we be choshit that in fact maybe she was mezane, but she has a schus that keeps her hanging? Why is she allowed to go back to her husband? So Achronim explain, it must be that this water checking her, it's not a 100% complete checking. What the water comes to do is to uproot the raglaim ladava, the chashash that we have that she was mezane. In other words, the soita has a cheskas kashus to be with her husband, just like any Yiddish girl. But we do have now a suffix because of the kinui and the stira that her husband did. We have a raglaim ladava that she was mezane. So therefore, we do not say she has a cheskas kashus anymore. So now it's equal. Now, when the water comes and she didn't explode, so she goes back to her cheskas kashrus. That is what the Sholu Meshiv in Ma'adura Shtista Beis says, and others as well. And therefore now she goes back to her cheskas kashrus as she was initially, and now she's kosher to go back to her husband. The Klei Chemda says, Rabbi Eliezer, who says that the owners can cause a pigul, it's only in zvachim and not in menachos, because owners can work in the bama. They can bring a korban in the bama before Beis Hamikdash was up and running, and therefore they are considered vehikriv hamakriv. And even though from the time of Beis Hamikdash there is no more allowance, no permission to go in the bama, the baalim can cause pigul because they still are considered the makriv. They have some shaychus to it. But in menachos, according to the opinion in Zvachim Kuf Yud Beis Amud Beis that mincha cannot be brought in a bama, there is no shaychus to a zar in the avoida of mincha at all, and therefore we can say that Rabbi Eliezer holds like that man de'ama, that menachos cannot be brought in the bama, and if that's the case, the owners cannot cause pigul and mincha, and if that's the case, the soita cannot cause her mincha to become disqualified or pigul. Some say, and this is the final answer, since we do not know that the soita woman in fact caused pigul, so they will say the mincha is like her original status, the chazaka. We are commanded by Dinei HaTorah to bring this mincha, and it's kosher and it's not pigul. And even if the truth is that she did have the wrong machshava and she tried to do pigul to her korban, since based on Dinei HaTorah, we decree based on the chazaka, the Torah wasn't given to angels. We don't know what's going on in her heart. So this mincha, as long as we don't know otherwise, is in fact a kosher mincha. And if it's a kosher mincha, it's going to do its thing, and the water will have the koyach to check this soita. And in fact, if she was mizane, she will die by the bitter water. Because by the chazaka of kashrus of this mincha, it's going to work. The miracle element of this water will do its thing. In other words, even though we assumed in our shaila, and the shaila was correct, and the assumption was correct, that the woman will try to cause pigul to her mincha, it's true. But it's not going to change the deen or the reality. Let the woman cause pigul, but since we do not know she did it, as far as we're concerned, as far as the deen of Torah is concerned, the mincha is kosher. And if that's the case, it will work. And in fact, if she was mezaneh, the water will cause her to explode and die.